Hi, this is Jeff from the Ozark Mountains in Missouri, USA. Well, I have here the windshield wiper cowling from my 2011 Mini Countryman. And as you can see, it is cracked. Now, both sides were cracked. I have repaired this side already. And I'll show you how I did that. And then we'll go back and do some touch up on this. There's some sharp points from the staples in here that I want to grind down so myself or some future owner doesn't, cut their finger when they have to pull this off, because you have to pull this off because the battery is under this side. Yeah, so you got to take the windshield wipers off and take this cowling off to get to the freaking battery. Very, very convenient. Anyhow, let's see how you fix these guys. The crack on this side is a little more difficult to deal with than the other side because it is split both this way and this way. So we've got to wiggle that around to get it snapped back into the original position as closely as possible. Yeah, hold your mouth just right and look at it sideways and you'll eventually get there. And I'm going to put some masking tape on here temporarily to hold that in position. Then we'll flip it over to this side. And we can see the crack goes up to here, down through there, and all the way up to here. And the first thing I'm going to use is this Dremel tool that has a little ball-shaped burr attachment. And of course the Dremel tool is going to be noisy, but the idea here is that we want to go over where that crack is and just create a little groove on the back to give the glue a little more surface area. And it also, any place you've got the crack overlapping like this, it'll open that up so you can get just a little bit of glue down in there. Okay, we don't need a huge groove in there, and you probably can't see that really well on camera, but you can just kind of see I've put a little scratch along that groove. Now I'm going to take some Scotch-Brite and I am going to scratch up all the areas around the crack so the glue has something better to bite on. Okay, so we've got that kind of dolled up in there. That'll give the epoxy a place to grip on. I do see one kind of area here in the corner that needs a little attention, so I'm just putting a flat tool in there. I'm just using the Dremel key, which I have handy. I could use a screwdriver or whatever. Okay. Now, next step. Okay, so I want to remove the temporary masking tape here. I was roasting coffee out here last night, and so there's little coffee chaff all over the place. Anyhow, So we got our tape off there. That'll allow that crack to come apart a bit. You can see, and now we're going to take some acetone on an old t-shirt. I find this sort of material works better than a paper towel or something like that. And we are going to clean and degrease this whole area that's going to be glued up. You can see all the crud that's coming off of there. That's from our grinding and sanding and oils and everything. You know, even though I scrubbed all of this plastic with soap and water before starting, you still get this. So, and I removed the tape so we could get the rag down in between there. Okay. Now we've got that cleaned out. I need to get this popped back into shape. See, it gets, the way it's split, it gets stuck in the wrong position. I'm going to take some new tape and tape this joint up good this time. Back on this corner of the workbench, I have this little hot stapler. I bought this a few years ago, and I used it right away for fixing my truck bed liner, and it did a great job at that. It's been through a couple winters, and those patches are still intact. And the idea is pretty simple. This is just like a little soldering iron, you know, the old type with, looks like a gun, and you've got a tip here, except you use these little pieces of stainless steel wire in various shapes. This is to go inside a corner. There's ones like this for going across cracks and flat areas. Simple to use. These are a little bit wider than the tool, the opening in the tool itself. And you just clip it in there like so. And there's a few different, well, it's not wanting to focus at all. It's got 3 sets of holes so you can get in just the right angle on things. So this is the tool you're going to see me use. The staples that came with it are in a bag like this, and you can get others, of course. This is 0.8mm corner staples. There's 0.6mm staples. I'm using these because they poke into the corner, which is useful. So let's get our piece up here. I took the standard 90-degree corner staple like that, and I bent it down to closer to 45 degrees because this is a pretty sharp valley in here. And within reason, you can, you know, bend these staples around to fit whatever shape you want. And I'll try to get this where you can see it too. So I'm going to get that position not all the way out at the edge, but about right there. And press the button. And I don't want this to melt all the way through to the outside, and I'm leaving the tool in place until the plastic cools. And yep, that's not quite enough. Okay, now I took an inside corner staple like that and folded the legs around to come up with this. I think this is what I did on the other side, now that I'm remembering. And it gives you a little more reach down into that valley. Still not perfect, but it's better. Okay, so and when you get to this flat area like this, it is a whole lot easier. Notice I'm keeping my, you can't see that, I'm keeping my thumb well off the button there when I'm adding staples. So for this area, It is much, much easier. Let's see if I can get it here where you can see it. You can go in line with the crack. I'm going to go slightly across the crack. Like that. So we got the staple melted in there. It didn't come out the other side. And I've got another one of these real pointy ones done. I'll put a few more of those along there, and then we'll come back and do the epoxy. Okie doke, I wound up with 5 pointy staples, 2 flat staples. The stapler comes with this type of nipper, which works great for ones on the flat. It leaves just a little nub sticking up there. For these down in the valleys, I've got an old pair of side cutters here that I don't mind if the staples ding up the jaws. Don't cut hard wire with your good side cutters, I guess. So I'll trim all these back as close as I can, and then it's epoxy time. This is the epoxy that we'll be using, JB Weld plastic bonder. There's also a DevCon product that works really well for various types of plastics and mixed plastics. This says 15 minutes. It'll get pretty hard in 15 minutes. It takes about 24 hours for it to be up to full strength. This is tan, which is less than ideal. As an aside, with normal plastics, you can dye them with a little acrylic paint. With this, which is a urethane epoxy, it turned into urethane foam. So, kind of interesting. It's just a little kitchen chemistry from the Ozarks that's not related to meth making. So anyhow, this isn't real hard to do. We're just going to mix up plenty of epoxy in this little cup here. When I'm done squirting it out, I'm going to pull the handle back the other way. That'll suck in any epoxy from the edge. This has a one-way keyed cap. And this will give you a few minutes to mix it up. Thing is with epoxy, you don't want to mix more than you need, but you don't want to mix just a teeny tiny little bit because it won't cure properly. I probably need more than this, but this is a good start. And these little cups I think I got from Amazon, pretty cheap. It's like a little cup for nuts and stuff at a party that can be pre-measured out. And then I'm just going to dab that down into the crack liberally. And we'll probably wind up with more in here than what we need, but we want it to come up the side. So there's plenty of surface area. Cover our staples. And we want to work fast enough so the epoxy doesn't go off before we get it in there. Just make sure I'm covering up the staples. Okay, I'll need to mix some more to get this backside. I'm not worried about this being messy. Nobody's ever going to see it. It's more important that it is solid and it does not crack again. So I'll mix up some more epoxy. I like giving this an hour or so to set up before I move it, even though it says 15 minute. I'm out in the garage here. It is about 0 degrees outside. And I finally get it up to about 66 here. Of course, that's in the much superior Fahrenheit system. Metric joke, warning. Anyhow, I'll mix up some more epoxy. We'll put this in here. I'm going to let this set, and I'll come back out, and I'll show you how I'm going to dress up the back of the other panel to make everything work. Now, I've got the first panel that I epoxied back together over here, and there's a few things I need to do to this. There is a spot right here where one of the staples is sticking up, and I just want to knock the top off of that so it doesn't cut anybody, namely me. The second panel sets in here down like that, so I want to smooth this out a little bit without affecting the epoxy. And this mess over here, this sets on here. When I took the battery out, I noticed these two little pieces of plastic down beside the battery, and that's supposed to snap over like that, but this was snapped clean off. So I stapled it, created a nice fillet of epoxy. This has some little barbs that are sticking out that I'll file down with the Dremel tool, and then I'll clean this excess off the top so this will snap on there like it should. I think since the battery's sitting here, I think this just makes like a little shield beside the right hand side of the battery. And this here, this had a hinge. This was broken into two pieces. It had a living hinge, you know, made into the plastic. And I had some wide Kaptan tape left over from another project, which is a real pain in the butt to get off the roll intact, but that made a good hinge for that. So in the Dremel tool, I have a grinding wheel. I'm going to attack the ends of the staples that are sticking up first, and then I might switch to a sanding drum. It depends on how this does on the epoxy. I might switch to a sanding drum to grind down the epoxy over here. Okay, with just a little grinding, we've got some more clearance in here. We've got all the staples that we're poking through knocked down, and this little flap here snapped into place. I blew it off with the air compressor. You can probably hear it leaking down in the background. Give it a little bit of wipe down with the rag, and yeah, you can still see the crack. It is not a perfect repair. I was under no illusions it would be a perfect repair. You have to have reasonable expectations for these things, but this is a solid repair. It'll last for years. It cost about 10 bucks. These new panels are about 100 bucks a piece. I wasn't going to spend $200 for this little thin piece of plastic that is under-engineered. The reason this cracked right here is probably because somebody twisted it a bit, pulling it out, and the sharp point. Sharp edges, corners like this allow stress to build up right there, and that's always where the cracks will start. Stupid design. Notice how they've got nice radiuses everywhere else except right there. That was stupid. Anyhow, so after letting the other one that we glued up earlier today set up overnight, I will do the same thing with it. I'll make sure the two fit together, and then when it warms up a bit, I'll pop them back on the car. Okay, the weather's not great today, but it's the best it's been in the last couple of weeks. And I want to get these plastic pieces back on here. Here's the other side. Excuse me, this is the side you already saw with the flap on it. That's the battery side. This is the driver's side. That is our fix. And I took some sandpaper on a block and just knocked the top of that off to account for the buildup of epoxy under the other side. And yes, those are trash bags. Had to keep the water out of there somehow. It's kind of redneck, but it does work. There we go. It's all back on there. Wiper arms are installed. The problem I was having is evidently there is a little rib that's supposed to be right here that snaps down in under the windshield. The only part of it that still existed on these plastic pieces was on this end, and there was a broken off piece that was still on the track that had worked its way this way, so it wasn't letting this slide all the way in here. So with that little rib on the back of this thing has to be a real pain in the butt to get out of there. Anyhow, get back away from the engine noise here. To buy both of those pieces of plastic, by the time you got them shipped to you, it would be about 150 bucks. And we fixed it for about 15 bucks. The price of the stapler was about $100 when I bought it, so you could have bought the stapler and the epoxy and saved a few bucks and still had the stapler when you were done, rather than buying new parts. So anyhow, it's fixed. I'm happy.